but I already chose it. And then we're going from small island to... I can't erase on this.
You can't?
No.
I thought you could.
No, it's like pen. All right. So it says, when he's going to the island, the current increased his normal speed by 2 miles per hour. So I'm going to call his normal speed x. So we'll say his rate is his normal speed plus 2 miles per hour. Coming back, it slows down, so we have x minus 2. Going there took 1 hour. Coming back, it took 3 hours. So the distances... This distance would equal x plus 2. This distance would equal 3 times x minus 2. But the important thing is the distances are the same. These need to be the same distance. So since they need to be the same, just set them equal to each other. So we're going to go with x plus 2 equals 3x minus 6. So I did go ahead and distribute it right off the bat. Save us some time. Let's subtract x from both sides and add 6 to both sides. We'll have 8 equals 2x. Divide both sides by 2 and have x equals 4. My answer is 4. No, it's not 4. It is not 4. I'm not going to circle that. It says, how far is the island from the camp? That just solves for x. The distance is x plus 2. So our distance... equals x plus 2, which in this case would be 4 plus 2, which equals 6 miles. That's the correct way to pronounce miles. All right, questions from the homework. Nora.
Number 43.
Number 43, all right. 43 says that we have Batman and Robin. Batman can clean up all crime in Gotham City in 8 hours working alone. Robin can do the same job in 12 hours. That's why he's the apprentice. So let's look at their speeds. Nora, let's picture their speeds. So Batman can do 1 task per 8 hours. Cleans up the city, 1 per 8. Robin is 1 per 12. So can we picture that in our speed times time equals our work?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have Batman 1 over 8. We have Robin 1 over 12. Then let's talk about the time. If Robin starts fighting crime at 8 a.m. and Batman joins him at 10 a.m., then what time will they have all the crime, I guess, cleaned up? So that means Robin works for, say, X hours. That means Batman's got 1 or 2 less hours to work because he started 2 hours after him. So Batman would be the X minus 2. Then we're going to go across and multiply those. So now I'm going to take a picture of my chart now that we kind of visualized it and made a vision board of our hopes and dreams.
I have a vision board.
Put this on it. All right, so we said Batman was 1 over 8 speed.
Yeah.
Robin is 1 over 12.
I got that. I just didn't understand where you got the 2 p.m.
Oh, where I got the 2 p.m. Okay, so they fought, so our X equals 6 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, it says, when do they have the streets all cleaned up? So that means Robin fought crime for 6 hours, and then he was done. So we just have to figure out when he started fighting crime. He started crime at 8 a.m. 8 a.m. plus 6 hours is 2 p.m. Because 4 hours leads us to 12. So that makes you go the extra step. If you got the 6 hours on the test, you'd have 3.5 points. I need the 2 p.m. for the full 4 points. Okay? Other questions? Safa. 37? 37 says a startup capital. It says Norma invested in a startup capital for her internet business in 2 hedge funds. After 1 year, one of her funds returned 5%, and the other returned 6% for a total of $5,880. If the amount on which she made 6% was $10,000 larger than the amount in which she made 5%, then what was her original amount of her startup? Okay, so we do have a total return. So we're probably going to need a total column. We're going to need a total column. And then we're going to need investment number 1. We'll need investment number 2. So really quick. Was 5%. Investment number 2 was 6%. The one that has 5%, let's go to that 10,000. So the one she had 6% was $10,000 larger. So the money she invested in the 6% was $10,000 more. So I said she invested X money in number 1, and that means X plus 10,000 in that one. That means the total money she made was 0.05 times her original investment, and this would be 0.06 times her original investment here. Well, when you add these two things up, that's going to be the total money she made. And they said the total money she made was $5,880. So there really isn't too much more I can fill out in this row because I don't know what, I guess we could average the percents, but it really doesn't work that way. All I know is that 5x plus 0.06 times that needs to equal that 5,800. So that's what we had across here. And we end up with our x being 4,800. But they ask for what is the total investment. So that means she invested 48,000 in this one, and then 48,000 plus 10,000 in this one. So that's going to be our total investment. This column is actually our total investment. Other questions? Ross. 57 says mixed dried fruit. There was a horrible mistake on that. If you read that on there, it shouldn't have said quarter pound.
Yeah. It does say quarter pound. It should not have said.
It should not. If you look at the answer key, I specifically crossed it out and said get rid of that. I also put a note on the answer key that says do not. Originally, I was going to make this problem a lot harder. I was going to have one for like a quarter pound and then one for a half pound, so you have to convert all that stuff. And then I decided not to do it, and one remnant of our quarter stayed in there. So just cross it out. All right, price of apples was $120. Price of apricots was $180. Then it said it wanted to have how many pounds of each must he mix together to get 20 pounds. So our total would be 20 pounds. And he wants it to sell it for $168. So realistically, these are the stuff that the problem gave me. All right, so we don't know how many pounds the apples do. And we don't know how many pounds the apricots have. But we don't want to have an X and a Y. It makes it really hard to solve. So rather than doing X and Y, I'm going to say, well, apricots are X pounds. That means apricots are going to be 20 minus X because I know their total needs to be 20 pounds. Right? If apples is 4, this would be 16, so they add to 20. So that shortcuts it so I don't have another variable. Then we just multiply straight across. And we go, well, 1.2 times x would be 1.2x. 1.8 times 20 minus x would equal that. And in this bottom row is 1.68 times 20 equals that. Well, remember, your total prices, this total price plus that total price has to equal that total price. And that's what I set equal to each other and solve.
Okay, if they're 3 equals x, I don't know how.
It should be 4 equals x.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if all that work is fine, it's just a small math error somewhere. Other questions? Cool. All right. If that's it, then we will continue on. Today we're just going to talk about the distance formula, midpoint formula. Oh, that's it. That's a pretty easy day. Unfortunately, there are 2-word problems on the back. Because I figure easy lesson mixed with 2-word problems, fun. Good review. Yeah, there we go. All right, distance formula. Find the missing side. That's all distance formula is. It is finding a missing side of a right triangle. So we're going to start by finding a missing side. And let's not use the Pythagorean theorem. Actually, we could. It's just 3, 4, 5. But anywho, so whenever you're trying to find a missing, it's just like Ross said. It's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So that means we're going to have 15 squared plus 20 squared is going to equal that mystery 1 squared. 15 squared plus 20 squared is 625. So x is going to equal the square root of 625, and we're going to have x just equals 25. I'm not going to go through all the crazy work on that. Well, the same exact principle applies when you're trying to find the distance between 2 points. So if I plot 0, 1 on my graph, remember that is x value of 0, y value of 1, so that's my point 0, 1. And then I plot the point 4, 4. What I want to find is this distance here. That is the distance between the two. Well, if I create a right triangle, we can actually get those measures. Well, the distance from here to here is 1, 2, 3, 4. The distance up would be 1, 2, 3. So to find that missing thing, it would just be 3 squared plus 4 squared equals our mystery thing squared. You solve that, and you're going to get down to 5. 3 squared is 9. 4 squared is 16. 16 plus 9 is 25. Square root of 25 is 5. Here's the thing. You don't want to have to count. You don't want to have to draw every one of your dots and a triangle on top of each one. So how do I get this base one? Well, those are just your x values subtracted. It is just 0 minus 4, or 4 minus 0 would give you the positive. So realistically, that 4 just comes from 4 minus 0. The 3 comes from your 2 y values being subtracted. That 3 comes from 4 minus 1. So your 2x values subtracted and your 2y values subtracted are your a squareds and your b squareds, and you just need to solve for the other side. So let's put that to use on this major distance thing that we got going on here. So we're going to call this point x sub 1, y sub 1. We'll call the other point on the top x sub 2, y sub 2. And then we're going to draw a triangle. Well, this distance here are our 2 x values subtracted. So that is x sub 2 minus x sub 1. This distance here is going to be y sub 2 minus y sub 1. I should say 1, not 2. So that means if I do my a squared plus b squared equals d squared, we would have d squared is going to equal our a squared plus our b squared. Well, our a squared, let's call it our x sub 2 minus our x sub 1 squared. And then we're going to add our y sub 2 minus our y sub 1 squared. But I really don't care what d squared equals. I want to know what d equals, so I would just take the square root of both sides. That leads us to our distance formula being the square root of x sub 2 minus x sub 1 squared plus y sub 2 minus y sub 1 squared. It is important that you remember where this came from, because there's going to be times in the distant future where you're going to have to find the distance between two things and you don't remember the distance formula. If you remember it comes from the Pythagorean theorem, it makes your life a whole lot easier. In fact, I remember that in high school when I was doing it on the ACT. For whatever reason, it slipped my brain, but I knew it was the Pythagorean theorem and I could figure it out that way. Memorizing stuff isn't the most effective long-term solution. Knowing where it came from is the most effective solution to things. All right, so it says find the distance between 5, -3 and -1, -6. If I didn't know that formula, in my head, I would plot the two things and figure out, okay, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and I could actually figure it out. But if you do memorize the distance formula, we can go, well, distance equals the square root of x2, I'm going to pick that as -1, minus 5 squared, plus we'll have -5 6 minus a negative 3 squared. Just to be clear, it doesn't matter which one you call your x1 and your x2 as long as you keep it together. So as soon as I call my negative 1 my x2, this has to be your y2. But you can flip between the two because it is squared. It doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. We'll call this one x1, and then we'll call this one y1. So as soon as you pick one to be x1, the other one has to be y1. That's the only real requirement. All right, well, that's going to equal the square root of negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6 squared, plus negative 6, that's actually plus 3, so that would be a negative 3 squared. Be careful with the negatives. That's why I put that specific negative 1 in there. All right, so we have 6 squared, which is 36. 3 squared, which is 9, so it's going to be the square root of 45. Square root of 45 is simplifiable. What perfect square goes into 45? Yeah? 9. So we could reduce this down to 9 times 5. The square root of 9 times 5. Well, the square root of 9 is 3, so it's going to be the 3 square root of 5. I do want you to simplify those if possible. That's the distance formula. So you can forget this whole page and just memorize the distance formula, or you can recognize where the distance formula comes from. That's a better long-term solution. All right, the last thing we're really talking about is the midpoint. The midpoint formula. First of all, how do we find the average score if your grades are 80 and 100? What's the math I need to do, Ross? Add them and divide them by 2. So we would just do 80 plus 100 divided by 2, which is going to equal 90. Same thing is going to happen on a number line. If I needed to find the midpoint of negative 5 and 3, so negative 5 is here, positive 3 is here, you're just going to add them and divide by 2. So we have negative 5 plus 3 divided by 2. Well, negative 5 plus 3 is negative 2 divided by 2 is a negative 1. So your midpoint is right there. And it looks like it's right smack dab in the middle. So if you ever have 2 points on a line and you need to find that midpoint, you just add them and divide them. Make sure you keep your negatives with negatives and your positives with positives. So on that bottom one, to find the midpoint of A and B, you're just going to say, well, that point right there is just A plus B divided by 2. Well, it turns out that simple property of averaging 2 scores on a test is the exact same thing you're going to use to find the midpoint between 2 points in space. However, we have to take care of 2 midpoints, really. We're really focusing on 2 different midpoints. So the midpoint is halfway between 2 endpoints. Its x midpoint is halfway between the 2 x values, and its y midpoint is halfway between the 2 y values. So if we look at the drawing, we have 2 points. We have A and we have B in the midpoints between both of those. Well, to get to the midpoint, I just have to go halfway between my x values, and then I just have to go up halfway between my y values. So it's finding just 2 midpoints. The midpoint of your x values with the midpoint of your y values will lead you to your midpoint of your 2 whole points. So let's use that to develop a formula. So on that formula, I should probably do this on the second side. We're going to say B is the point, x sub 1, y sub 1. And then we'll say A is my x sub 2, y sub 2. Well, when you're doing your x, y values, you go over x, up y. So if I look at this distance right here, that is my x sub 1 right here. I'd go over x sub 1, and then I'd go up y sub 1. Over x, up y. This one would be over x sub 2, and then we go up y sub 2, so this height is y sub 2. We just need two midpoints. I need to know what is the midpoint of x sub 1 and x sub 2, because I need that point. And then I need to go up that halfway distance between y sub 1 and y sub 2. Well, that's just averaging the points. That midpoint between your two x values are, add them together, x sub 1 plus x sub 2 divided by 2 will get you that point. And to get your y1, it's just going to be y sub 1 plus y sub 2 divided by 2. It's just two midpoints. You're finding the halfway point between your x's and your halfway point between your y's. And that is your midpoint formula. That is the whole thing. That is a midpoint formula between 2 points is average your x value, so that's x sub 1 plus x sub 2 divided by 2, and average your y values, which would be y sub 1 plus y sub 2 divided by 2. Make sure you know how to do these. Don't lose points on these on the test. All right, the hard ones to study for are the word problems. Don't lose points on ones where you just have to know formulas. Know how to find the distance between 2 points, know how to find the midpoint. They should hopefully be easy questions on the test. All right, guys, the rest of the time is for you to work. Like I said,